recording again. So, all right, welcome back from the break. So now we're going to look at the next session of our course. Just before we do that, it's a quick reminder of what we were looking at before. So we looked at a lot of information quite quickly there before the break. Let's see how much you can remember. So interpersonal skills are made up of 4 core skills. Correct. All right. The positive outcome of an interaction is directly linked to how successfully you apply, great, yeah, or use the skills. That's right. Notice which communication barriers you come across in the workplace and of course, yes, right. So on this course, this is something that we're going to be looking at each session. We'll identify a different core skill and think about how we could use it. For the next session today though, however, now that we've figured out, we know what interpersonal communication skills are, we understand, we all understand the same thing when we talk about those. We're going to be looking at some useful techniques that we can use to enhance our communication in different workplace situations. Structuring clear and coherent messages. That's what we're looking at. This is a very practical session, this one. We'll be looking at some really useful techniques. It's often one of the highlights of the course, and the feedback that we often get from participants is that this is one of the most memorable sessions in the course. So I'm really happy that we can have a look at this one now, and then go ahead and implement some of these. So 3 common reasons to communicate with colleagues: making requests, presenting your point, giving information. We're going to be looking at some useful ways to structure and organise those messages. And obviously these are things that we these are things we do every day. We know how to do these things, but we're going to be looking at some ways of making these really, really clear, really kind of useful methods. Particularly, again, as with all of this course, we're thinking about communicating in a second language, English, with colleagues whose first language may be English or may not be. And just having that really clear structure can be so useful, because it goes back to what we talked about before. The whole point of this is about making communication more successful for less effort. We're also going to be looking at some useful planning questions when we're trying to think about how we structure a message, how we think about what we want to say, what's the best way to approach that, what questions do we need to remember to ask ourselves. And we're also going to be thinking about some real life situations from our own work to really think about, how having a clear structure helps us communicate more effectively. All right then. So to begin with, again, just working sort of by yourself, thinking by yourself. Just going to give you 2 minutes. Can you think of some examples when you need to do these things at work? Just by yourself for now. 2 minutes. Try to think of at least one example for each. These can be spoken or written, by the way. Alright then, when you've got some ideas, what I would like you to do next, if you look in the chat, so if you remember, annotate at the top of the screen, view options, annotate, and then look for on the left hand side of the screen, this way, look for the T, the text function. Once you've found that, I'd just like to see if you can type out your ideas under or next to each category. I've just written an example there for you. Confirming details of the course with sales might be something that I need to ask. Okay, great. Oh. Hang on. Oh, no, that doesn't. Why is that happening? That shouldn't be happening. Let's move that. There we go. Asking for a colleague to work on days off. Ooh, tricky one. Okay, nice. Yeah. Any more? Okay, well, I think that's certainly certainly a great kind of, it's a great list of different ideas there. Some good suggestions there. So, let's see what we think about those though. Out of these three different workplace activities, which one do you think you need to spend the most time doing? Kyril, for you, which of these three things is kind of the biggest? Right. Adila, how about you? Is it the same for you, do you think, or similar? Yeah, great point. So I think being persuasive is really, really important, isn't it? Definitely, I can understand that. Um, Interesting question. Which do you think is the most challenging out of these three? Really? Right. I guess that kind of it. That I think that is a really good example. I mean, it's a really sensitive one. And so it's not just about asking something, is it? It's about almost like trying to resolve a conflict before it happens, trying to make sure that you don't upset people unnecessarily. I have to say though, I think the operations team in Malaysia, I think compared to other operations teams that I've worked with and that I know of around the region, I think the Malaysia team is really good at handling these kinds of sensitive situations. We certainly don't see the amount of conflict between teachers and operations that you see in other countries. So yeah. I mean that's great. Yeah, I know that in Thailand. Oh my goodness! Wow, it's a war zone. But yeah, all great suggestions, definitely. Right, now that we've kind of established that, so presenting your point, probably the thing that you do most often, asking for something perhaps the more challenging one. We're going to have a look at some useful techniques for approaching these things. Just need to clear that. Right, let's move on. Let's move on. Okay. I guess we've kind of discussed this one a bit already. When we are thinking about the kind of information that we need, we think about sort of presenting a point first. Make that a bit smaller. What kind of things do you need to remember to include when you present your point? So, Adila, you already mentioned sort of you need to be persuasive. What else would you say is important? Okay. Yeah, definitely. I think aims is that's important for anything, isn't it? Really. I guess similar to clear intention. Okay. Anything else for that one? Okay. Well, never mind. We'll be looking at these in more detail anyway. But yeah, really important to kind of. I guess we're kind of thinking about. We're going to be looking at some general structures in a minute that they're part of the course. We present them to participants from so many different departments and industries and everything. But it's really important to think about how do we make that relevant for you, particularly in your jobs. So these kinds of things, what specifically do you need to remember? These are important to think about first. Asking for something, as we said, the most challenging one. What's important to remember to successfully ask a teacher to work on their day off without them getting upset? Act. Oh, tact. Yes, sorry, tact. Can you give us an example of what you mean? Right. Definitely. Yes. Yeah. That can sometimes be a real challenge for some people. Again, when you think about the language barrier and that sort of thing, cultural expectations can be tough, right? Anything else for that one? Mm-hmm. Sure. Anything else? All right. Okay. The last one, I guess, it's still important. Giving information. What kinds of things do we need to include there? Sorry, what was that? Details. Yeah. Sure. Anything else? Definitely can sometimes be a challenge for me. Yeah, right. Why is that important, Kyle? Absolutely right. Yeah, longer emails, more effort to read, more effort to understand, remember. Nobody's got time for that. But still, when I've had too much coffee, oh my goodness, really tough. Sometimes I find actually for native speakers making emails clear and concise is actually more difficult because we don't really study this. a lot of other people, when you study English at school, you study how to write essays, how to make your point. We don't really study like that, so you often find like a lot of like British adults can be really bad at writing concise and clear emails. It's a skill. It takes a lot of work. All right. These are definitely all good ideas. I think I agree with all of these. Let's have a look though at some interesting techniques for each of these. One thing that we're really keen on with professional skills courses is acronyms, using letters to make a word where each letter means something specific. It's a good way to remember simple techniques. So for example, to make a request, we have the dear technique. So we're thinking here about how to organize communication, spoken or written. These are all different things that we need to remember in the order that we need to remember them. So for example, making a request, D, what's the first thing that we need to include? Details. E, any idea? Possibly right. Explanation of. Yeah, right. How is that different to detail? Yeah, possibly though. Possibly. A. We'll look at it in a minute. R. Could be something like that, okay, we'll have a look at that one together in a second, but yeah, possibly something like that. To present your point, we have prep. Any idea about this one? Yeah, point, just say what the point is right at the beginning. Sounds like a good idea to me. R. No. E. P. Okay. Well, again, this is something we'll look at in a second. So, yeah, we'll find out what this means. Finally, to give information to people, what kind of technique is useful, you might be able to guess from the shape. The triangle technique, yes, that's right. Okay, so we're going to look at each of these in turn and figure out what exactly we mean and what we're talking about here. First of all, we have dear. Oh, actually, do I need to show you that first? What am I doing? Okay, right. Actually, before we look at this, what I'm going to do is share a link with you in the chat. And before I share the link with you in the chat, I'll just show you what it is that I want you to look at, just so that it doesn't get too confusing. All right. So here we can see the dear technique. This is a Google Doc, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. the DIA structure. So on the left hand side of the screen, we can see an explanation of what each point means. So D, what does D actually stand for? Describe, right. So when you are making a request, describe, express, assert, reinforce. We can see a little bit of an explanation there about what these actually mean. And then on the right of the screen, what can you see there? Right. So examples. Do you think these are all separate examples, or do you think they all come from the same message? I'll give you a clue. They do seem to be talking about the same thing. You're absolutely right. Yes, these are all sentences from the same message. Do you think they are in the correct order? I'll give you a clue. No, they're not. Right. So, I'm going to share the link to this Google Doc with you. You should all be able to access it. Okay, and working together as a group of 3, what I would like you to do is help each other to take these sentences, copy and paste them into the right place in the message. So think about which sentence describes the situation, which sentence expresses how you feel, and so on. Before you start though, how many boxes are there? 4. How many sentences are there? So one box is going to have 2 sentences. Yeah, right. You need to think about which order they go in and that sort of thing. You should be able, you can just kind of copy and paste, cut and paste into the middle box. Okay, right. So link is in the chat there, so click on that. Let me know if you have any issues with accessing it. Alright, great. So I can see all 3 of you are in there. I am going to switch off my camera and let you guys collaborate with each other on this. Oh, great job. Well done. How was that? Do you think that was easy or difficult? Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think especially when you see it for the first time, it's quite hard, isn't it? Um, let's have a look at the answers, and you can compare, see how you did. So back on Zoom, I've shared the slide here. Now the slide is still a little bit lots of lines everywhere, but you should be able to kind of follow and compare, see how you did. So the first one, D, describe. We've got I'm presenting our proposal to XXX next week. Correct. Express. If we win it, it will be such a great opportunity for us. So you put that one for reinforce. Why did you choose reinforce for that one? If we win it, it will be such a great opportunity for us. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that I totally see what you mean there. And that, thinking about what's in it for me, I mean, that's so important with any kind of communication. So it's great that you're sort of focusing on that and thinking about that. But yeah, in the official answers, that sentence is actually the express sentence. Is talking about how you feel. Again, the sentences that you guys choose for express how you feel, they do in those sentences. They do talk about how they feel. So I agree, it's quite a tricky one. If we look at the answers though on Zoom, they went for that one. So in the official answers, that express how you feel was actually quite short. It was just sort of one sentence. What do you think the advantage might be of just making that kind of really short at the beginning? For the express, so for express, on Zoom we can see that it's just that one sentence. If we win it, it will be such a great opportunity. So rather than having a long paragraph, the writer just chose one sentence. Why do you think that was? Definitely. I think it comes back to that point that Kaiwa made earlier about messages being concise, right? It's just, the point of this request is not to let you know how I feel. It's, I want you to do something. So just expressing how you feel, but making it kind of really clear and, really related to the goal. Then assert. You can see on Zoom, that's where we've got these two. I'd really appreciate you taking a look at my slides. If you could manage to review it before Friday, that would be great. So the assert part of the message has the most information. Why do you think that is? Any idea? Exactly right. This is the main focus of the message, isn't it? This is the bit they really want to focus on. And like you were saying earlier, right? Details, deadlines. This is what I want, and this is when I need it. So, yeah, main focus of the message, this is where most of the details are. And then R, reinforce. I know you've worked with this client before and would really value your advice. Yeah. Any thoughts about that one? Right, absolutely. It's quite complicated, I think. So, because they say with the reinforce, with that box on the left of the screen, it says why the other person should carry out your request. Provide the listener with a what's in it for me. If we think about that sentence on the right, I know you've worked with this client before, blah, blah, blah. What's the what's in it for me? Like what is that? True, definitely. But when we're thinking about what's in it for me, it's not what's in it for me asking the request, it's thinking about the person listening or reading. What's in it for them? Right, I think that's it. You know, I would value your advice. You know, I look up to you. Yeah, you know, it's so that what's in it for me in this particular message is very, very personal. Which may not be something that we think about sort of, you know, the first time when we're thinking about work communication. It's not always something that's appropriate in different cultures. It's not always something that we feel comfortable doing. So I'll leave that one for you to decide whether you think that's something that you would do or should do. But it's an interesting thing to think about anyway. But yes, the DEAR technique. Describe, express, assert, reinforce. A couple of questions just to think about. We're going to look at the other techniques a little bit in a second, but before we do that, how does the DEAR structure make it easier for your listener to act on your request? Sure. Yeah. Shah, would you agree with that? Definitely that. Yeah, great point. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I guess number two is that second question is a bit more open. What information should you include to make your request specific? Well, I think if we look at the example that we've just been studying, that we've already mentioned, you know, they talked about the timeline, the specific actions, why they're making the request. I guess this one kind of depends a bit on the kind of requests that you make, but it's still really important to think about how to make your request as specific as possible, right? A really specific request, people understand more clearly, fewer questions, it happens quicker, you get your results quicker. All right then, so that's DEAR. Let's move on now and look at prep. So lots of information today, lots of details. If we remember, so the prep structure is for what? Right, presenting your point. So this was the one you guys said was probably the thing that you do most often. And we can see again on the left of the screen, what does PrEP stand for? Yeah. Was that similar to what we guessed before? yeah. I think we got that one. We got that one. Okay. So right for prep, this one, 4 different categories. This time we got 6 different sentences. So similar to before. If you look back at the Google Doc, this time page 2, not sure if we've got time to look at triangle technique as well. We might have to skip that one, but definitely prep. I think this one would be useful since you guys identified that it is something that you do often. Let's have a look at this one together. Similar to before, can you put these sentences into the correct category? Again, I'll just give you a few minutes for this. I'll switch off my screen, switch off my camera, not my screen, and let you collaborate. Okay, how are we doing? Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, well done. It's yeah, it, it does take a bit of effort, doesn't it? It's you've got to use your brains quite a lot for this, so I appreciate that. Well done, good teamwork. Yeah, I think this is the kind of activity. If you have like a big group of 20 people, you can kind of split them into teams, and you can give each team a different, different kind of different structure, and you can have 5 or 6 people working together, helping each other. It's one of those activities that is a bit more difficult when there's only 3 of you. But well done, good teamwork. And I mean, reading that without looking at the answers, it looks okay to me. I understand the logic behind your choices with that. So again, back on Zoom, let's have a look at the answers and see what we've got here. So the first bit, making your point, your key message or position, say it in 1 or 2 sentences. We have got, I would like to offer our team some training on interpersonal communication skills. Did we get that correct? Excellent. Okay, but that's good though. That's good. Good that you identified it needs to be nice and concise. Next, reasons for your points. Using facts, data, or research to add credibility. We've got while we have a very technically competent team. How did they? So with this, we can see when they say reason, we can see, I guess, if you think about the content of the sentence, how they put it together. What is the evidence for the point? So the point is we need training on communication skills. What evidence do they provide in this sentence? Right. If we think about how they wrote this sentence, like I mean, because we talked before about it was slightly different thing, talking about making requests, but trying to use tact. That sort of, how do they add this criticism with tact? What do they add? Exactly. Yeah. Sure. So I mean, it's just a little thing, but good to pick up, good to notice. Then there's one more sentence in the reason, which is, and as you know, connection with others. Correct? Did you get that one good? Okay, maybe not, but I would agree with you. I think it is pretty confusing because in that sentence, the and as you know sentence, I mean, they mention staff survey scores, and you might think, well, that's evidence, that's an example, isn't it? So yeah, I don't know. But in the official answer, that's part of the reason. Examples, evidence, and experience. Definitely though, those other 2 got those correct, so well done. And restating your point at the end. Restating your key message or position to make it memorable. What information did they add in that final sentence to kind of make it stand out? Right, so they add that in there, don't they? That's one thing I've found just in my job in the last couple of years. When you're presenting a point, particularly if it's something negative or other people might see it as a problem, and in this case we have communication breakdown, teams not really functioning very well. It's really, really important to present any kind of negative issue. It's really important to present it not as a problem, but present it with a potential solution. People respond a lot better to solutions than to problems, right? As I'm sure we have all experienced. It's always a really good idea. So I think I really like that last sentence where it's like, I've already looked into it. We've got this point in the training. We can do this. People are going to respond a lot more positively to that than him saying, we've got a problem. Here you go. You solve it. Nobody wants that. Okay, great. Well done. I think, to be honest, thinking about time. Actually, before we do, some good debrief questions about prep, and again, just helping you think about how you could translate this, use it in your work on a day-to-day basis. Thinking about prep, when you are presenting a point, you think about how you present a point now. Is it sort of similar to prep or different? Do you use this kind of structure already? Is it similar to this or not? Okay. Right. Interesting. Why do you think that is? Okay. Adila, I can see you nodding there while Kai was talking, so I'm guessing it's... Right, sure. So in your opinion, would you say that you don't really need to include that? Right. Sure. So in a situation where, like, you really do want to convince people, remind them of the evidence, then it might be useful. But at the same time, maybe it's not always necessary to go into loads of detail about it. Sure. Interesting. But good to think about. Actually, one more thing. Shah, I noticed you said the way that you present your points, you were just like, no, this is not how I present my points. Why is that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Um. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I think it's really important to remember that this is like it's not a you have to do this. It's kind of here's a good idea, um, and I think as with any kind of training course, it's really important for participants, for all of us when we're training, to look at this kind of information and think about, well, how does it compare with what I usually do? Why do I do the things that I usually do? Um, would this help? Would it be valuable or not? And very often, you're the one who knows the best. It's your job. It's what you do every day. But it's good to ask yourself those kind of questions. So yeah, excellent. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it comes back to that idea of, this is something that everybody knows. So there's no need to kind of overstate it, right? It's all about keeping those messages concise and making sure they get followed by action. Yeah, sure. All right. So, the triangle structure. Now, this is something I don't know that we have much time to discuss this one. If you remember, the triangle structure was for giving information more generally. Yeah. What I can do is share in the chat with you the toolkit for the second part of today's session. You can see in the chat box now. This just goes into a lot. I mean, it gives you all of the information that we've just been discussing, all of the kind of the answers to what we've been looking at and explanations. So you can have a look through that, and if you want to know more about the triangle technique, it's all in there. We don't really have time for it now, but as I said, if you wanted to look at that more, that's there. The triangle technique, just to structure it, or just to kind of summarize it, it's just about making sure you present things in points of like 3 points, or you're organizing a presentation, making sure you have 3 stages. We often talk about beginning, middle, end, introduction, main body, conclusion, blah blah blah, because that just makes it easier for people to remember. Is the point. Anyway, moving on. Planning questions, right? So this one I think is also very useful, regardless of why you need to communicate with other people. If you have a lot of information to give them or a complicated request to make, it is often good to start by asking yourself 3 basic questions, and you can see them on the screen on Zoom. What are the questions that you need to ask? Right. What do you think? Would you say kind of you generally ask yourself these things when you're like planning an email or something like that? Yeah, right. Yes, pretty basic questions, and I think we all know that we need to remember them. It's just that sometimes, when we've got a lot of things to think about, when our minds are focused on something else, it can often be difficult to remember. So it's just good to have these questions just there to remind yourself, or once you've finished writing an email, just to read through and think, did I remember this? Have I remembered to think about this? Have I made this clear? Can people understand my intent? Okay. So, with that in mind, we are going to practice now. Got an activity to practice thinking about all of the things we've been talking about today. Think about a situation at work where you need to, or it can be a present situation, or it can be something in the past, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be like 100% real situation. It can be a typical situation that you have to deal with. So I'm going to ask you to brainstorm a situation where you've had to do one of these things, and then see if you can kind of write out that request or presentation using one of the structures that you've been looking at. Just to kind of experiment with it, really. Figure out what you like about it, what works, what you think you might need to change if you were to use this in real life. Okay. Now, I'm also going to share the task book for this session in a second when I can find it. Okay, so that's a bit big. Right. Okay. This is the task book that I will share with you in a second, okay? Just got a little bit of a review. You've also got your toolkit. It's got the 3 structures in. We are looking at page 5 or page 6, okay? You choose either page 5 or page 6. You don't need to do them both. For each one, you've got some space here. You can make notes. You can write it directly into the PDF. The 3 planning questions, and then thinking about how to put that information into the structures we've been looking at. You also have your toolkit, which I just shared with you. If you want to go back and review any of the information about DEA or PrEP, you've got the information here. Also some more information on planning questions. I think this is really useful. It goes into a lot more detail. I mean, we don't really have time to study this in loads of detail now, but just gives you an idea of kind of what we mean, what we're thinking about with each planning question. Okay. So, hang on. So, first, think of a situation at work. It can be a real situation or something a bit more imagined, generic, something present or past. Either making a request or presenting a point. Then using the task book and the toolkit for help if you want. See if you can plan out your DEA or PrEP style approach and the kind of things that you need to remember for that. That's a lot of information. Sorry. Does that all make sense? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, Shah, are you going to go with making a request or presenting a point? Shah, are you... Oh. Okay, all right then. So, all right, and Adila, making a request or presenting a point? All right. Kyle? Kyle, are you there? Yeah. Okay, great. All right then. So, um, in your task book that I've just shared in the chat, using either page 6 for making a request, page 7 for presenting a point, think about the planning questions, think about how to structure what you want to say. I'll give you, let's say, I want to say 5 minutes. If we need a bit longer than 5 minutes, that's absolutely fine. All right. Jazim, do you have just a Word document or a notebook or something? That's a shame. Well, if you have a notebook, you can write down some notes, or you can just it's not so not so you can just think about your answers. I know it's not quite the same. But how would you answer the planning questions? What kind of information would you include? I've shared the template on Zoom, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, that's 5 minutes. How are we doing? Do people need a bit more time, or are we okay? Yeah, yeah, sure. All right, I'll give you 3 more minutes if that's okay, just so we don't take too long. Okay. All right then, there we go. Time's up. Don't worry if you haven't quite finished. Well done though. So how did you get on? Did you manage to open the PDF in the end? No. Oh, well, at least Zoom is still working, fortunately. Were you able to kind of to think about what you would do with the deer structure? Um, sure, sure. Okay, well done for trying anyway, I suppose. Okay. Um, Great though. Great job, generally speaking. So, Kyle and Adila, how did you get on? Mm, mm, mm. Okay, great. Um, and Kyle, how about you? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, sure, sure. Yeah. Um, I mean, and that's the point of this activity really, is just to sort of experiment with it, and just, see for yourself what's easy, what's more challenging, that sort of thing. Would anybody, does anybody want to kind of share what they've written, or would you rather not? If you don't want to, it's okay. But if you do, oh, okay. I think you should be able to share. You should. Can you share screen on Zoom anymore? I can't remember. Try it and see what happens. Great. Yes. Excellent. All right. Okay. Mm. Okay, nice, nice. I like how you've managed to keep it really concise and to the point there. That's great. And yeah, do you think that the planning questions kind of helped you to focus more, or mm-hmm. Yeah, right, right, right. I see your point. Yeah, definitely. How similar or different would this be to how you would normally write it? Mm, right, right, right. Yeah, like we were saying before, right? Sure. Okay. But yeah, good to experiment with it. I guess, don't know, yeah, so I think with that last one, it's an interesting question. Shah, Adila, how would you kind of, have you got any suggestions for Kyle for that last point? How could they kind of restate that? Any ideas what Kyle could add there? I guess maybe sort of one thing you could say is, or just kind of reinforce, is that, yeah, having the training Wednesday to Friday means that we will have, maximum resources to support you, you know, something along the lines of the training will be, the best possible training you can get is Wednesday to Friday, because that's when all our staff are here, or something like that. I don't know. What do you think? would it be worth saying that? Or? Yeah, sure. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great point. This course is, interpersonal communication skills is more of a speaking course, but yeah, we have other courses which focus more on how to express this through email, through writing, and there are other techniques that you can use to really kind of emphasize that and support that, definitely. But great, thanks a lot for sharing. It's great to see an example. Right, there we go, and we are kind of at the end of the session now. Thank you very much for that. Just to finish with, just got some kind of debrief discussion questions for you. We might run over time a little bit, sort of 5 minutes. Sorry about that. I hope that's okay. So we kind of thought about these already, but I just want you to have a discussion with each other about these. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I'm going to switch my camera off, and I'd like you to kind of take turns to ask these questions to each other, if that's okay, just to kind of get your thoughts on what we've been studying today. All right? So who would like to go first? All right, nice, great discussion there. It's great to see everybody sort of reflecting on kind of linking the session to our everyday work, which is, you know, that's the whole point. All right, so well done today. Here's just a kind of a quick review of exactly what we've been studying. So we looked at structures that we can use to make a request, present your point, and give information. We looked at the 3 planning questions, and we thought about how structuring messages can help us to communicate more clearly. And I think to summarize that discussion we were just having, I think everybody was kind of in agreement that the structure is more helpful when it's more formal communication when you're talking to people you don't necessarily know. And I think even for me, sort of, I guess similar to Shazim, I don't spend a lot of time talking to clients outside of the organisation, but in my position, there's lots of times when I'll have to email other managers in other countries, other departments, people who I don't know very well. And so I still have to be quite careful and quite formal, and even in those situations, you know, just clear structure is really important. Right. And yes, so just as a key message to summarise today's session. Structures are useful. Planning questions, very helpful. It helps us to focus on what our listeners or readers want. And yeah, practice is always a good thing if we have time for it. Okay, thank you very much for coming today. Thank you for agreeing to have the session recorded. I'll stop the recording now.